I hope you're enjoying the day so far. I hope you're enjoying being here at the Heritage Party conference. Now, you know me from before the Heritage Party, maybe, but maybe some of you have just got involved in politics for the first time. And I know there's a lot of people like that today because politics is supposed to be boring. It's not supposed to be interesting, and it's not supposed to be filled with people who are doing so many crazy things that are ruining our life all over the place, here, there, and everywhere. But I got involved in politics about 10 years ago and was full-time in politics from about 7 or 8 years ago when I got elected onto the London Assembly. And I first got involved in politics for 2 reasons. I was concerned about the EU and where that was going, and I know a lot of you are and were concerned about this and still are. And I was concerned about political correctness, which is what I called, and what a lot of us called, the move against our freedom and free speech 10 years ago. And 10 years ago, we had the phenomenon of people being cancelled and no platformed from universities, and I thought that was bad enough. But however crazy things were 10 years ago, move 10 years on to today, and it's got to a level of insanity that I never could have envisaged 10 years ago. Could you? I don't think so. I mean, it feels like, to me, sometimes I'm fighting 20 different battles at the same time. It's not just the EU and political correctness, it's cultural Marxism, which is what I call political correctness now, and all of its manifestations, whether it's critical race theory, radical feminism, LGBTQIAAPPP2S3G, or whatever it's called today. I can't keep up, I just call them the alphabet people. So, and all the transgenderism, which is the latest manifestation of it, or queerism, I don't know what you call it. That's just a few of the things. And then we haven't just got the EU, we've got all the globalist organizations and all of the things they're doing. The World Economic Forum, the World Health Organization, the various agencies of the United Nations like UNESCO and so on, which have made up the stuff that is going into schools now. And you see that manifest in relationships and sex education, called comprehensive sexuality education. That's what they call it at the UN. And they want to bring this all over the world, to every single country in the world, to teach children things which are utterly perverse, both scientifically and spiritually and socially and physically. You've got people who are activists going into schools and teaching children that they're not boys and girls. What a load of nonsense that is. Teaching children critical gender theory as well as critical race theory. Teaching them that there's 100 different genders. Well, there are not 100 different genders. There's 2 sexes, male and female, determined by your anatomy and chromosomes. And I don't care how many people threaten to cancel me, I'm not going to stop saying that because it's the truth. You cannot be a man on Monday, a woman on Tuesday, a demigirl on Wednesday, a unicorn on Thursday, and a fiery Arab dwarf dragon on Friday. It's just not possible. And that's the kind of thing that they're actually teaching children. And as a former science teacher, I think that is abominable, because they're not teaching science, but they're teaching fake science as though it were science and confusing people. And the tragedy of the situation, the worst thing is that children are getting their bodies mutilated and they're getting injected with chemicals at the behest of activists who don't have the best interests of children at heart. They are wicked and they need to be taken out of education completely. Education should be about teaching people and children the skills they need to survive and thrive in life in this country. And China doesn't have any problem with that, because China is teaching their 11-year-olds advanced differential calculus while we're teaching children this kind of nonsense. But the tragedy also of the situation is that we're not teaching the children of this country, the young people of this country, the skills they need to do the jobs that need to be done in this country. And for years and years and decades, actually, we haven't been teaching children or young people, we haven't been teaching enough people and training enough people to be nurses, to be doctors, to be plumbers, to be electricians, to be gas fitters, to be IT consultants, even to be accountants. So we are bringing in millions of people from abroad, and we have mass rapid immigration because that's justified by saying that we haven't got the skills, we haven't got enough people in this country to do the jobs, when it would be so easy to train enough people to be doctors and nurses and midwives and plumbers in this country. If education was focused on that, rather than teaching all of this nonsense, this wokery and the critical gender theory is just one aspect of that. They also teach children critical race theory. They teach children that this country is bad and has a bad history, when actually this is a great country and it has a really good history. They don't teach children that this was the country that ended slavery, the first major country in the world ever in history that ended slavery, and was so good in the 19th century, it went all around the world, stopping all the other countries, stopping the French and the Arabs and the Spanish and the Turks and the Portuguese from enslaving people as well. That's not taught to our children. They focus on a few people who did it for 150 years. I know that was bad, but they don't teach children to be proud of our country and all of the good things that we have in our heritage. And the first talk today was from David Griffiths, who spoke about our Christian heritage, and the principles that we have from our Christian faith are what made our country great. If you follow the 10 Commandments, you won't go far wrong. If you follow what are called modern British values, LGBT and messing around and disrespecting your past and undermining the family, undermining the nation, undermining property, well, that's not Christian, that's communist. And it comes straight from Marx's Communist Manifesto, and that is what the Uni Party is trying to implement. There's no difference today between the fake Conservatives and Labour and the SNP and the Greens and the Lib Dems. They're all the same. They've all coalesced around cultural Marxist communist values, which is what they're doing, and they're trying to get the children, because they know when they get children at 7 years old, you give me the boy, I will show you the man. That's what the Jacobites said, and that's what the Uniparty is doing today with their common purpose activists and their Fabian activists and their World Economic Forum activists that Klaus Schwab has sent around to penetrate the cabinets of all the governments in the world. Well, we don't want them. They can go away. They have no place in our country because we're coming for them as the Heritage Party. And we're going to kick them out and we're going to restore our nation. But let's go back a bit. I was talking about how we don't train enough children with the skills that we need to do the jobs that we need to do. So what we have is mass rapid immigration. And that is a terrible, terrible thing, because it is ruining and undermining the fabric of our nation all across the country. Communities are being ruined and decimated by that. And I've got nothing against any individual person. In fact, if I was someone coming over on a small boat and I was in their situation, I might do it myself, because I'm getting rewarded by the fake Conservative government. If you come across the channel on a small boat, you get 4-star hotel accommodation, and you get a weekly stipend, and you get food, and you get a mobile phone, and you get free healthcare, and you can anchor yourself, and then you can bring your children in, and they get free education as well. We should not be rewarding people who come to this country illegally. We should be pushing the boats back to France so that everybody knows you're not going to make it. But all the parties but one publicly say that they support rapid mass immigration, and they would have more rapid mass immigration, and they would have an amnesty for everybody who's already here, which would just encourage more to come. But there's one party that says they're going to do something about it, and they're called the fake Conservatives, but everything they say they're going to do about it, they do the opposite. You can't trust them. They say we're going to bring immigration down to the tens of thousands, and it goes up to the millions. What a load of nonsense. We have a massive problem in the Channel with illegal immigration, but we also have an even bigger problem with legal migration, because they've made so many ways and created so many schemes and programs for people to come here that last year we had net migration of 600,000, and that is not sustainable. That's the biggest number ever. Do you think they're going to make it go down? I don't think so. But we have the policies that will. We say we need strict caps on student visas and work visas. Limit them to 100,000 total. Then we would have net zero immigration straight away. We may even have net emigration. And I don't think a few years of net emigration is a bad thing after 25 years of massive net immigration. Because that's affecting the housing market, it's affecting the healthcare that we have in our country and so many other things, because there's just not enough houses being built for all the people that are coming here. You know, they build 200,000 new homes a year. That's too many, because this country is full anyway, and they're building horrible tower blocks and densifying and intensifying areas around travel hubs. You see them all over the country, these disgusting, brutal things that are absolutely repugnant to the human soul. We should have buildings that are beautiful and fit in with the historical and heritage character of the places where they are being built. Our forefathers left us a beautiful country with beautiful countryside and beautiful buildings and beautiful towns and cities and villages. But this generation is ruining it, and they're messing up every single community in the country, both from national government and on a local level. This is happening, and Madeleine's going to speak about that later this afternoon. That's a very important thing that I think a lot of you are going to learn about, how local governments are being used to implement all of these kind of agendas. But these things may seem disparate to you, but they're all part of the same agenda. This is Agenda 2030, which is there to completely transform the world that we live in and make it a completely different world to what we were born into and what we're growing up in. A world where we do not have any freedom, a world where we have 15-minute cities, a world where we have central bank digital currencies and cash is gone, and our money is controlled by the government, and they tell you what you can spend, when you can spend it, and when your money expires. And if you have the wrong social credit score, you might not be able to spend anything at all. This has already come in China by the Chinese Communist Party. Well, I don't want this country to be turned into something that is a vision of the Chinese Communist Party and the World Economic Forum. I want this country to stay free, and I want to restore our freedom again like it should be. But who else is going to do that? Because all of the old parties in Parliament are all following this same agenda. And another aspect of that and another side of that is the climate alarmism and the net zero nonsense. And Roger's going to talk about that this afternoon. It's going to be a really good talk about climate. Now, I have a background in chemistry, and I can assure you that carbon dioxide is not a harmful demonic gas. We don't need to be afraid of it, and it's not going to hurt you, and we don't need to worry about carbon dioxide emissions. And we don't need to kill cows because they emit methane, which is what they're trying to do in some countries like Ireland and the Netherlands, and if they could, they would do it here. But I think people are waking up to all of these agendas and are saying and speaking up about it, and awareness is rising in people about how these things are wrong and how we need to restore our heritage and not let these things come to pass. And I know people have been taking action in many, many different ways, especially over the last 3 years, where we've had something happen that I never ever would have thought would have happened in my lifetime, which was a lockdown because of something which was essentially a bad flu season. Oh, am I going to get kicked off social media for saying that? Never mind, it's the truth. And the thing that hurt everybody more than that bad flu season was the cure and what they said we need, which was these experimental injections, which now are harming and killing and giving a lot of people heart attacks, and they don't want anyone to talk about it. If you talk about that, then they try to silence you. They try to silence you if you talk about how people in the NHS were giving people midazolam on the pathway to death, which is what the NHS essentially was doing, and tens of thousands of people were killed with morphine and midazolam in this country. This should not be happening in England, Scotland, Wales, or Northern Ireland. It shouldn't be happening anywhere, but it has happened, and we need to get into Parliament to make sure this never happens again. So what will we do when we get into Parliament? Well, there are so many things that we have to do, but here's just a few of the top things that we will do in our programme for government. We will implement a Freedom Act, which gets rid of all of the terrible tyrannical legislation that has been passed over the last 25 years, which militate against our fundamental freedoms: freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom to protest, freedom to trade, freedom to move and travel around your own country. We will repeal the Online Safety Act, which has passed this week. Never would I have thought that speech that is legal but considered harmful, or disinformation or hate speech, whatever that is, would be banned and criminalized in this country. Those things are not legally defined. We need to get rid of the whole edifice of hate from law in its entirety. That word should not even be in law. All crimes should be taken seriously and given a serious sentence. There shouldn't be a higher sentence if the perpetrator and the victim are of certain ethnic groups or gender groups or sexuality groups. There should not be different tariffs because of the characteristics of the people involved. All crime should be taken seriously. And what is hate speech? No one can even define it, but someone can make a complaint about you if they feel that you are being hurtful or unfriendly or hostile to them. Which is why today, this is no joke, we don't just have people being no platform from universities, we have people being kicked out of their jobs, and we have the police coming round knocking on the people's doors because they made a limerick about transgenderism or something, or had a bit of banter, or even stated a scientific fact or a spiritual or religious principle. And that is wrong, and we cannot continue to have that in our country. We need to re-establish freedom of speech in its entirety. And we will repeal the Equality Act, which is one of the worst pieces of legislation that has ever been brought before the Parliament in this country by Harriet Harman, otherwise known as Harriet Harperson. He was the first person I stood against in a parliamentary election in Camberwell and Peckham. The problem with the Equality Act is it has something called the Public Sector Equality Duty. And in that, you are required to foster good relations with people with protected characteristics or individuals with protected characteristics. So that is another piece of legislation that allows anybody to make any complaint about anybody, and you will lose your government contract, or you can be thrown out of your job, and all of this kind of thing. So we need to get rid of all of these laws. So that will be what we do in the Freedom Act, which is one of the first things. We will also make a Vaccines Act, and we will hold vaccine manufacturers criminally liable for any adverse health event or death that happens if anyone uses their products. How is it that they have liability apart from the fact that they lobbied government and they lobbied MPs and people in power and got this law onto the statute books ready for them to roll out something which is toxic and harmful to people, and therefore it's the people that suffer and it's the taxpayers that pay rather than the pharmaceutical manufacturers who made this junk and put it into people's arms, and they're the ones who are now avoiding responsibility. Well, they need to be liable. And we will make sure that that happens. We'll also pass a Climate Act, and what that will do is repeal the Climate Act of 2008, which puts net zero and writes net zero into law, because net zero is a load of rubbish. We will make a Child Protection Act, which will be like Clause 28, but it will be Clause 28 plus. It will be like the Hungarian law and the Russian law that protects children from propaganda that promotes homosexuality, transgenderism, and mutilation to children. And anyone promoting these things that will harm the minds and the bodies of children, whether it's in schools or on the television or on the internet, will be subject to criminal charges for harming children. We are a socially conservative party. And I ask all my candidates three things. There are three socially conservative principles, apart from all the things that I've just spoken, that I ask our candidates if they can agree with. Or even if they don't agree with it, that they will agree to advocate for publicly and in Parliament. And that is that there are two sexes, male and female. Marriage is a man and a woman, and unborn children are children and have the right to life. So we will introduce a Marriage Act that will restore the definition of marriage as a man and a woman in the United Kingdom. And we will introduce an Abortion Abolition Act to protect the lives of children in the womb, 230,000 of whom are killed every year in this country, and we need to save their lives. And we will also introduce a Cash Act, because cash is under attack. And all over the place, wherever you go, businesses and kiosks and restaurants, even fast food places and coffee shops are no longer taking cash in many, many places. The number of places where people are going cashless is expanding. But we will make a cash act to require that all physical retail outlets, including car parks, including leisure centres, will have to accept cash as a form of payment so that people who cannot use cash or choose not to use cash will not be discriminated against. And that's just a few of the good things that we're going to do if we get into Parliament. So I very much hope that you listening here today are not just going to be people who are in the audience listening and then go home and forget about it, but I hope you're going to be people who get home and say, I am going to be a candidate for the Heritage Party. I'm going to stand for Parliament, and I'm going to kick out the Tory, Labour, Lib Dem, Green, SNP, cultural Marxist, COVID, communist, climate, alarmist, nonsense-speaking uniparty. The next election is only a year away, maybe a year and 2 months away. It may even be before that. We have a lot of work to do in the next year, which is why I'm so glad that so many of you are here today. You've come along, you want to meet other people, you are getting actively involved in the Heritage Party to build us up in the grassroots and to stand as candidates. And I know many of you listening on the live stream as well, or listening to this afterwards, are thinking, you know, our country is just going wrong, it's going to the dogs. I need to do something about it. Please, please, now is the time to join the Heritage Party, to put your head above the parapet, to stand and take back our nation. It feels like I finished, doesn't it? I haven't. I'm nearly finished. So please, please do join me here. And it is a long road ahead. We may not make it, but we have got to try. Rome was not built in a day. Everest is not climbed in a day. And you don't build a house in a day. You don't run a marathon in a minute. All of these things take time and a lot of effort. But we are well on the way. We are here, we have been going for 3 years, and who knows what we can achieve in the next year. With you and everyone listening and everyone you know joining in, getting involved, we can take back our nation and restore our heritage. Thank you very much.